You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Listen, my friends, forget normal. We started to forget normal when Trump came to power, and more so after the Republican Party fell under his crushing wheels to try to keep him in power. Then normal began slipping away fast with the global pandemic. And now it's formal bye-bye to normal, since we may be on the brink of a third world war. So let's just stop being astonished, Forget normal. The best we can try for is resilience and fortitude, with the desperate hope that that trying in itself might lead to transcendence and the saving of the planet. It's not that I'm an optimist, but I'm certainly not a pessimist. A realist, a surrealist is more like it. Today, my special guest for an extended conversation is Nina Khrushcheva, scholar, author, Russian specialist, and a granddaughter of Nikita Khrushchev, the former Soviet premier. She returns to the program to discuss the current tragedy, and I'm always grateful to her for coming back because she knows that on this program she can take whatever time she needs and not be constrained by the usual CNN sound bites. Then, later on, in Fighting Words, I'm going to explore the gender/sex aspect of this crisis. But before we get into any of that, we need to go inside the headlines. There are some other news stories that demand notice, even if only in passing, before we plunge back into the ghastly situation in Ukraine. The rising gas prices and the burden to the environment, for one. Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, for another, to ban the teaching that same-sex lovers are human beings. Ban it for children who are not age-appropriate. Not that such teaching is done in Florida schools anyway. Well, it passed into law. COVID-19 deaths worldwide reached 6 million. The Amazon rainforest hurtled toward irreversible change. And a happy International Women's Day to you. Am I not your cheerful podcast host? But oh, how I do like to at least try and look on the bright side of things. And 3 news items do come to the fore immediately, although the third item has taken more than a century to get here. First item, a jury found Guy Reffitt guilty of obstruction of official proceedings and other charges in the first trial of a January 6th Capitol riot defendant. Prosecutors argued that Reffitt, an oil rig manager and recruiter for the extremist Texas 3 Percenters movement, had, quote, lit the match, close quote, that led members of the pro-Trump mob to stampede Congress. The guilty verdict followed a week-long trial that included testimony from police officers, a Secret Service agent, one of Reffitt's buddies in the Texas 3 Percenters militia group, and Reffitt's own son. The jury also convicted him of wearing an illegal pistol on his hip during the attack and of later on threatening his teenage son and daughter to keep them from turning him into authorities. Reffitt faces a maximum of 20 years in prison on the obstruction count alone, and the son, Jackson Reffitt, testified that his father had told him, quote, "If you turn me in, you're a traitor, and traitors get shot," close quote. Feminists really nailed it. Trace it back far enough and violence always and inevitably starts with violence in the family. Right on the heels of that conviction came the conspiracy charge in the January 6th attack for longtime Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, who was indicted along with Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes. And last, but way overdue, Congress finally gave its approval to make lynching a federal hate crime. It's painfully hard to believe that over a century has passed with failed attempts to explicitly criminalize this hideous ritual of white supremacy. The historic bill carries the name of Emmett Till, the 14-year-old African-American boy tortured and murdered in Mississippi in 1955. And under the measure, the crime is punishable by up to 30 years in prison. Representative George Henry White of North Carolina first introduced legislation to make lynching a hate crime in 1900, the only black lawmaker in Congress at that time. The bill never even made it to the House floor for a vote. And in the years since, more than 200 similar bills have been filed and have failed. The great author and black activist Pauli Murray, in her long, moving correspondence with Eleanor Roosevelt, passionately pleaded for the bill's passage. And even Eleanor finally came on board. But could not convince FDR. It took until 2022, for shame, for the Congress of the United States to say that no, it didn't approve of lynching after all. And now back to Russia's, or rather Putin's, war in Ukraine. McDonald's, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, and partially Pepsi-Cola suspended doing business in Russia because of mounting public pressure. Well, let's hear it for mounting public pressure. Interestingly, the withdrawal of products from these food and drink giants might carry more clout than any other sanctions, no matter how mighty those oil corporations are. This is simply because McDonald's, Starbucks, etc. will have a direct, immediate impact on the Russian public, who, according to reports, has so far been left largely in the dark that there even is a war in Ukraine, because all remotely independent media have been shut down. So, if they know about it at all, somehow, the public is told that Russia is winning. This is through state media. Not only is Russia winning, but Ukrainians welcomed Russia with open arms, and the world approves. But when you can't get your Coke or your burger, you begin asking questions, and perhaps joining those now 14,000 principled Russian citizens who have been regularly demonstrating against the war in cities all across Russia, even at the risk of a newly imposed 10-year prison sentence. Now, those sanctions are tricky businesses, though, literally. For instance, the U.S. now has banned oil imports from Russia, but this might not matter that much because America can buy and Russia can sell elsewhere. But markets are reacting as if supplies will be disrupted, either by future sanctions or because global energy companies, fearing a public backlash, are self-sanctioning their purchases of Russian crude. Indeed, Shell Oil, which bought Russian oil at a discount the other day, has now apologized and says, "Oops, won't do it again." Corporate cynicism never ceases to astound. But meanwhile, my mind has been circling back to those charged or already convicted leaders of the 3%ers, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers. So filled with ultra-manliness were they when they assaulted our democracy and our Congress, and so patriotic and eager to kill. Why don't the followers of Guy Reffitt and Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes, why don't they go and volunteer to fight for Ukraine, as many people around the world are doing, not unlike young idealistic men who went to fight in Spain in the late 1930s? They could get their murderous, lethal rocks off by downing other men who are bombing maternity hospitals and burying newborns under the rubble. Just saying, although I wouldn't want to wish them on the poor Ukrainians. They've been suffering far too much. Besides, at some point, I suppose the super patriots would realize that they were fighting for democracy in Ukraine, not against it. We have to take our first short break here, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back very shortly with an extended conversation with our very special guest for this week, Nina Khrushcheva. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
My guest for today's conversation is Nina Khrushcheva. She is professor at the Julian J. Studley Graduate Programs of International Affairs at the New School. The granddaughter of former Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, she's an editor of and a contributor to Project Syndicate, Association of Newspapers Around the World. After receiving her Ph.D. from Princeton, she had a 2-year appointment as a research fellow, at the School of Historical Studies of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, and then served as deputy editor of East European Constitutional Review at the NYU School of Law. In the 2000s, she was a fellow, at the World Policy Institute, where she directed the Russia Project. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, a recipient of Great Immigrants, the Price of America Award from Carnegie Corporation, and a Gold Medal of Honorary Patronage from Trinity College, Dublin. Her articles have appeared in Foreign Policy, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, The Financial Times, and elsewhere. She is the author of Imagining Nabokov, Russia Between Art and Politics, and The Lost Khrushchev, A Journey into the Gulag of the Russian Mind. And her latest co-authored book is In Putin's Footsteps, Searching for the Soul of an Empire Across Russia's 11 Time Zones. That came out in 2019. Nina, welcome. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, during such sad times.
I know. I'm actually also worried about you. Have you had any spare moment to sleep during all this? Because I know you're in great demand by the big boys, by CNN and all of that. Have you had a minute to breathe, or are you just in despair?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm doing so much better than people in Ukraine and so much better than people in Russia right now, so I'm not complaining.
Okay. All right, dear. Well, I'll get right to it because you are someone who knows him. Your recent book was about him. It couldn't be more timely, even though it came out a couple of years ago. But it was very strong in foresight. The one that's called in Putin's Footsteps, that was in 2019, searching for the soul of empire across Russia's 11 time zones. People forget that it's that enormous. It's okay. Some background to my question. I keep thinking all the time that he's first, last, and always KGB, and that this isn't really about. It was never about communism or capitalism or Ukraine or NATO. It's about empire. It's about Peter the Great. Is that true? Is it got worse? I mean, was he always like this? Is he mad? Is he savvy? Is this just Putin as usual, given Grozny and Aleppo and carpet bombing? Place it for us, please.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct that it is about an empire and Peter the Great and Catherine the Great and Vladimir the Great, the baptizer of Kievan Rus in 880, around 880. So it is part of imperial mentality. I mean, that's what my whole book was about, because I traveled all across Russia to see what Russia is. It is indeed an empire, because who has seen that empire? And so to see how big it is. And I remember by the end of the trip, I thought, if I were Putin, I would think I'm God, having all this land. So to some degree, it is about size. I mean, a lot in Russia is about size.
Particularly since he's very short.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yes, it's slightly pop psychology, but there's really something to say about the Napoleonic complex. There's no question. I mean, not all short become Napoleons, but some
exactly.
do.
Yeah.
And he's always shown in this sort of large halls with the small man in a very glamorous, glorified environment behind large tables with a very large ego.
Yeah.
So that certainly kind of creates a certain psychological background to this. I think it is about Ukraine, because Ukraine has always been sort of an appendage to Russia for centuries, and it's called even, and I think we probably spoke about it on your program earlier, that its original name was Malorossia, which is a small Russia. So it is Russia, but small. And that certainly goes into the attitude of those adventures. Then there is another, and I say adventures, unfortunately, facetiously, in this great sadness and tragedy. And then, of course, there is Putin staring into Biden's eyes and say, you, America, is not going to tell us how to be, because look at you and why you do this and I cannot do this. So in this sense, it's not even about Ukraine anymore. So it's almost like a matryoshka doll. All these actions today, you can peel them off, and there's always this layer of something. And it's not one layer as in a matryoshka doll, but it's always all these layers together. And KGB certainly comes into it, because the whole kind of mentality behind KGB is oppression of any sort.
God, it's just that it seems to have got worse. I guess that's what gives fuel to people saying maybe he's gone mad, maybe he's this and that. Because I mean, we lived through the nuclear threat with your grandfather and with John F. Kennedy, and in Cuba, with missiles in Cuba, and they both backed away from the brink like sensible people. Well, I mean, sensible people shouldn't have got there to begin with, but you know what I mean. So your grandfather did not go to the brink. John F. Kennedy did not go to the brink. Well, is he just saber rattling with his nuclear threats, or does it chill your blood too?
Well, it chills my blood, because until February 24th, I didn't know he would invade Ukraine. I actually was insisting on every single show that he was being an absolute idiot, that he was saber-rattling, because when I study Putin as a politician, in a sense, I mean, he's an autocrat, still, there's really no national interest now being met by what he's doing. Obviously, not obviously, it's a clear. So but I was analyzing him as a political figure who does heavy lifting and military lifting, because that's how Russians do it. It's all very giant mentality and threatening mentality to some degree. But then I was completely wrong, because the evolution of his, after 22 years, absolute power corrupts absolutely. After 22 years, I mean, it does, from a strongman politician as he was, he did turn into something sort of evolutionized into what dictators do, is that when you step on their toes, with their big egos, when you don't recognize them, Joe Biden said, we want predictable relationship, and then, didn't meet the expectations. So you lash out. You think that the world is according to you. It's sort of, the world is according to Putin. So certainly that kind of it must be something that drives him. So I would say it is saber rattling, but it's a very terrifying saber rattling. And who knows how when Putin is willing to stop his saber rattling, because he does, or he's willing to show further that he's not afraid. He's not afraid of anything. He would go down with a bang, so to speak. So, of course, with Khrushchev and Kennedy, none of them, I mean, Khrushchev certainly, although he initiated, in a sense, the Cuban Missile Crisis, his statement always was, we never, ever, ever plan to use it. It's all for defense. And never he would say that we are considering it.
That's right. I know. I remember that well. I mean, I was a kid, but I remember the tension in the States and the nervousness, but they both backed away. I just, that's what's so frightening this go around. What, if any, are the hopes for? Well, let me put it this way. Over the past days, over 8,000 people have been arrested, principled Russians, crying out, "We want peace." We are demonstrating all over the place. There were older women, hundreds and hundreds of older women were apparently arrested in St. Petersburg, thus winning my heart forever. But 8,000 have been arrested. Is that going to lead anywhere? And where are the generals when we really need them?
Where are the generals? Well,
Yeah.
the generals are fighting the war in Ukraine. So that's where the generals are.
I see.
And KGB or FSB now, the federal security forces, are cracking down at home. So the story, apparently, some sources say that the war was not advised by the security forces, so the KGB, FSB, because they knew that it's not going to go as smoothly as the military, but the military did somehow. As you mentioned, the Aleppo bombing, in Syria was sort of an easier way to do it because you don't have to pay attention, so to speak, to human rights with Bashar al-Assad in power.
Right.
But then the military wanted to, they were itching to test the weapons, and Putin likes weapons, so that happened. But so security lost that debate. But on the other hand, security is very happy to clamp down on any remnants of civil society and free media and civil liberties. Who are these people to be critical and be against whatever the Kremlin is saying? So essentially, it becomes a double whammy: is that one part doesn't want another, but it's convenient for both to be as oppressive as possible. I mean, I was told this morning that officially 150 journalists already left Russia. Some remained, and those who remain basically prepare themselves, and we all prepare ourselves for the dark age of not just the pre-media dark age, but the dark age of everything.
Meaning cut off sort of from the world.
Cut off from the world completely, and from services to goods to information to I was talking to my niece, and she said, "Well, but they can't cut off all social media." It's like, they can, darling. You don't know what it is. She's 20 years old. She doesn't know what it is to live in something else.
Yeah.
But I said, no, we are just going to, write with feather pens, even if we have feathers somewhere. So it's just unimaginable that those sanctions and also ostracism, global ostracism, does to Russia right now, because it also eliminates essentially every civic connection, cultural connection to the world.
Yeah, and civil society goes down the tubes.
And civil society, I mean, I was told by a friend as well, a journalist, that Nordic Council, that was very supportive of rights and, freedom of speech in Russia, now canceled all relationships, saying we're not supporting Russians, we're not supporting they didn't say supporting civil society, but basically we're not supporting anything Russian because you didn't take Putin down before. And so that becomes, once again, catch-22. So you don't want civil society because they were appeasing Putin, supposedly, but then you also eliminate any help to civil society to continue to confront Putin.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. Do you think, since there's no, at least visible, and probably no yet at all, generals who or the like who might be plotting from inside to bring about some kind of regime change, do you think that this is happening now because his years of relaxation with Trump, adoration, emboldened him?
I'm not that sure. I've never subscribed, and I always get into trouble for this. But,
go ahead.
I'm trying to be honest.
Please, this is the program to get into trouble from.
Yeah, just feeding into kind of general preconceptions.
Oh, go ahead.
I was never of the opinion that Putin was particularly close. I mean, Trump needed Putin to be in opposition to everything, and Putin, of course, a man with an ego. An American president says, you're great. He was sort of accepting that, but they were not necessarily in cahoots, as Trump would say or would imagine. And yes, they liked the attention. They used Trump for their own propaganda, but not like they were thinking, America is going to be. I mean, I think for 5 minutes at the beginning they may have thought that, but not really.
I see.
So I think I think he was emboldened more by after 2014, when I think on your program, I'm sure I was saying that we need giant sanctions, because that would be like a boiling frog. So the frog jumps in boiling water and dies.
That's right.
And that doesn't want to die, so it jumps out and then it just starts fighting for its life.
Yeah.
But since 2014, it has been death by 1,000 cuts, because they've been civil society have been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and sanctions were kind of stepped over and whatnot. And so by now, we as society have been weakened tremendously. And Putin, of course, as weak states have weak liberties, he was strengthening his authoritarian and now dictatorial tendencies. So I think he did get worse, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, until February 24th, I was still dealing with him as an authoritarian politician, and now he's a full-blown dictator. So we don't know what the outcomes of it, how it's going to play out,
and nor do we know or have any idea of what in God's name his exit strategy is, because there doesn't seem to be one. Yeah.
Yep. I don't think it is, and I actually think that's what dictators suffer from. I mean, I was talking to historians, and Napoleon was winning before he started losing, and Hitler was winning before he started losing. Because once they win, they really think. I mean, after 2014, he thought he would just get away with it, which is insane, and yet he thought he would get away with it. So it does seem that the ending of this kind is near, but how long that near would take, that's a very big question.
Yeah, and which direction? I mean, if there's no one to rise up within Russia, and help him.
Well, maybe there is.
Oh, I see. We just don't know,
because we don't know that. I mean, military coup has not been in Russian history. So, but maybe there are KGB generals who are now being annoyed, and that's what kind of my thought now. Fine, something happens to Putin, but I don't think something would happen to the system, however, because that's what I mean by those. So the war, they don't want the KGB people, the former KGB people, whatever they're called now, but they want their oppressed society. So if Putin is gone, Putinism may remain.
I see.
And that is also another thing that should be taken into consideration. Maybe it wouldn't be that crazy as Putin's, but it could also be more crazy.
Yeah, of course. I could see that it could go in that direction. And Novotny?
He is unfortunately there, and I think that's what one of those very revengeful people with big ego and KGB background, like Putin. When he zeroes in on an opponent, he just eliminates him, her, the country. So Navalny is eliminated. Now Ukraine is being eliminated. Zelensky is a new Navalny, and that continues. So, but I don't know. I mean, I cannot. I'm always asked this: how can he be stopped? I don't know how he can be stopped. I don't think sanctions, at least in the short run, are going to help us at all.
Well, it's very confusing to the person on the street, because on the one hand, sanctions seem to be doing some good, tiny bit of good. They don't not seem to be doing a lot. On the other hand, if we were to cut off any imports of gas and oil, that seems to be more dramatic. But on the third hand, I'm sorry, this is turning into a Hindu goddess. On the third hand, he has said that additional sanctions will be considered an act of war. And then he rattles his nukes. So you're
and sanctions already, by many Russians, sanctions already seen as an act of war. Because Russians were asking on before liberal media completely, Rain TV was closed, one of those few independent sources, and I was commenting on it just almost probably the last day they were still on air, and a very liberal and very anti-Putin anchor asked me, the sanctions are against us. How do they think it's going to help? So do they really want us to go to the streets and take him out? Because that's going to be a bloodshed. That cannot be the plan of the United States. So they are also, in some ways, it almost can help him, because his His rating is already going up. I mean, it was February. It's right on the cusp of the war. We'll see what happens in March because the new numbers haven't come out yet, so I don't know. But it's also possible that people do rally behind the flag, those who haven't left, because where else are they going to go?
Yeah. And of course, one of my fears, well, maybe my overwhelming fear, is that it will get inevitably so bad. I mean, when the folks in power keep saying it's going to get worse before it gets better, you know it's going to get worse. You don't know it's going to get better eventually, but you sure as hell know it's going to get worse. And my terror is that when it gets worse, there will be such, and there should be, in a very strong sense, public pressure on Biden to lift the no-fly zone and to put boots on the ground and to engage, that he won't be able to withstand it. He has withstood it so far, and we're not in World War III. But on the other hand, how long can that last? I mean, do you think?
But to some degree, we are in a World War III.
Yeah, we are.
Because yes, they're technically one country's fighting another country, which is also the most insane thing, because we're fighting a country that Putin says is the same as Russia. So that's basically a civil war. This is not even a war. It's a civil war, brother killing brother. Mm-hmm. But also with the whole global reaction to Russia in a very I mean, it's not war with guns, but it's certainly a war in any other sense. So we are in that war environment.
Yeah.
It's no longer a Cold War. It's not a hot war fully taking the globe yet, but it's already in between. So
it's warming up.
War,
yeah, it's
in third World War territory for sure.
Yeah. The irony is that, I mean, there's a bitter irony to this, which is that at least the global North can no longer claim that civilized Europe doesn't engage in this sort of thing any longer. We outsource that to, by proxy, to those silly little countries in the global South. Let them suffer and die for us, because this is right there in the middle of Europe.
And it's also actually what's sort of also but quite unfortunate. It also showed how racial bias shows.
Yes,
because the covering of the West of this is insulting to any country that is not white, any country that went through those.
That's right.
That went through those crises. I mean, there was all these cartoons happening in Yemen. A Yemeni woman is standing with the Ukrainian flag on the barricades and says, well, now we are noticed. So we were not noticed before, because who cares about that?
Well,
when the white countries
suffer. That's right. 6.5 million refugees from the global South in the past couple of years have tried to come to Europe. And what are they doing? They're being prostituted if they're women, and they're selling handbags on the streets of Milan if they're men. But Ukrainians are very, very white. So
they're very, very welcome. So they deserve any help they can get. I mean, this is
absolutely.
They need, but it just shows and actually plays into the Putin propaganda, is that look at those, white saviors of white people. Look how hypocritical they are. They start all these wars everywhere, but now.
Right.
And so in some ways, and a lot of people, not a lot of, but many people in Russia, especially not with global connections, absolutely buy this propaganda.
Oh, God. There was a woman at the Polish border who was thrown from the train, a mother with 4 kids, and from Zimbabwe, I believe, and her skull cracked open but they kept saying, you can't get on the train, you can't get. And now, of course, the European Union has rushed to say, no, we'll accept everybody, and I'm sure they will accept more, but practice lags behind principle, as we well know.
And absolutely, and that doesn't excuse Putin's murderous behavior, but it is unfortunate. I mean, and one of those things that, unfortunately, nobody can claim morality.
No. I think the Poles were accusing the Ukrainians of not letting people on the train, and vice versa.
Right.
And but the whole that whole region is not. look, we all have to watch out for the denazification in our own souls, as far as I'm concerned. And if as long as people are being not permitted to escape a country where they're going to be killed, that's not good news. That's very bad news, in fact. So,
doesn't it? But still, Putin is now the criminal.
Yeah, I mean, but that can't help either. If they're on the one hand, they talk about the we don't want to back him into a corner, and on the other hand, they speak of him as a war criminal.
Well, he's already backed. I mean, if that's the case, he's already way back.
I see.
Every time especially when the British start speaking, because they don't do their homework in speaking,
I know,
they just immediately come up with a reaction because they, they're a little more performancy than probably needed to be in this kind of situation.
Yeah. What do you see as an ending, honey? What do you see? I mean, you are the sane voice in all of this, who knows the background deeply, has written the books. Do you see?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I thought by now, I did think that to some degree, Putin would back off because he already showed. I mean, fine, you showed you have a muscle. Just why do you need to destroy it? But my fear is that the Navalny case is such an indication, because when he starts going after somebody who he thinks or something that he thinks undermined his ego, he has no way of stopping it. The Kazakh president, Tokayev, whom he just saved during the uprisal in Kazakhstan in January, asked him to be a sort of a big senior statesman, a big brother of all the nations of the area, because the sanctions are killing everybody, and it doesn't look good for us at all.
Yeah.
So for the sake of the world, show your generosity. And Putin allegedly replied that he would complete his mission.
Frightening. A very frightening man. It's just, when Trump was in power here, we used to think, oh God, if only he had some intelligence, you could reason with him, which of course is fallacious. But Putin has the intelligence. I mean, he is not a fool. But power is such an addiction. It is such
exactly. I think once you become a dictator, the intelligence, whatever intelligence there is,
went on
you're
mute.
Paranoid. Yeah, you're paranoid. You're isolated. You're post-COVID.
Right.
I mean, we know he was terrified of COVID. He's terrified of mortality. Something, by the way, that was happening to Stalin in later years.
Really?
Yes, he was completely terrified of. That's why he's sitting in the large tables away from people, just in case.
Yes, it looks ridiculous. It looks absurd,
right, exactly. But I think I think in that dictatorial mind is already. It doesn't respond to the same triggers. It's also very far away from reality. You see reality the way you see it. I mean, your geopolitics is in your brain. It's not what's on the ground.
Yeah.
So I think that he's probably in that kind of environment. The foreign ministers of Ukraine and Russia are meeting of March. I don't know with the Turkish kind of mediators. I don't know how that will play out, because they also seem to be very much dug in their heels. And now Putin asks for recognition of Crimea and recognition of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions completely. So basically, and that's how it is. It's either this or nuclear holocaust. So, so basically take your pick.
I see. Oh, God, Nina. Well, start by taking care of Nina Khrushcheva, please, because, this guy sends folks into other countries to do away with his adversaries. And you have been a consistent, principled voice for a civil, free Russia for as long as I've known of your existence. So please be careful. Please be careful.
I am. Thank you so much.
And if we might come back to you in a few weeks and plague you again for your insights and your wisdom, I will be grateful, and I will try. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and good luck to you, and good luck to the people.
All of us.
Yeah, to all of us.
Good luck to Ukrainians. Good luck to Russians. Good luck to all of us.
We have to take a final break here, but I'll be back in just a moment with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Gender roles. Those are fighting words. Any societal crisis operates as an excuse for turning the clock back on progress, as folks rush to their rabbit holes for a safety that does not exist. We saw it during COVID, with schools closed and childcare scarce, and no, by and large, men have not stepped up to their end of the bargain. Millions of women have been forced to leave the labor force, which in itself had a huge ripple effect on the economy. We can fill in the blanks in terms of all the other setbacks, an increase in domestic violence all around the world because people were forced to be at home together 24/7, an increase in general in violence against women because women are convenient targets, especially, but not exclusively, when race can be used as a further excuse for such cruelty. Sexual abuse, as well as physical abuse, has skyrocketed, and so forth and so on. And every time war rears its gruesome head, we see the gender roles locking into place like bars bolting shut. It's almost the reason war exists. Men were not allowed to leave Ukraine with their refugee families because they were needed for defense of their country, either in the army or as volunteers, which many were and are. Certainly there were women who volunteered to stay and are still there, or they had to stay, or they were and are simply unable to leave. But the refugee population was and is, as I've noted before, 98% women and children. Women who are facing not only exile, poverty, homelessness, and sexual abuse, but possible widowhood and loss of family members as well. But the gender dimension is not only visible in the result, it must become just as visible in the origins of such crises to begin with. Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, has said that when she first met with Vladimir Putin, he, having learned she was afraid of large dogs, deliberately brought his own large, fierce dog, unleashed, to the meeting. Merkel noted, "I understood why he has to do this, to prove he's a man. He's afraid of his own weakness. Russia has nothing, no successful politics or economy. All they have is this." Close quote. Russia had his manhood, not so subtly tinged with sadism. He has flaunted that manhood regularly by staging judo sessions that he, naturally, won, and by being photographed with a rifle, always hitting his mark, mind you, posing with live tigers, who later turned out to be tranquilized, with tiger cubs, and with polar bears, plus risible displays of riding bare-chested through the woods in southern Siberia. He has posed as co-piloting a fighter jet, sailing on a nuclear-powered submarine, and descending 4,600 feet to the bottom of Lake Baikal in a mini-submarine on a 4-hour mission to inspect crystals containing natural gas. All this honcho-macho stuff, in addition to the standard militarized masculinity tropes, overseeing troops marching in Red Square and tanks rolling down Moscow avenues, those very troops and tanks that Donald Trump so longed to mimic in his own ridiculous, failed grasp at manhood. Furthermore, Putin is quite short, and although women have been telling men, well, forever that size really, truly does not matter in sex because skill and affection are actually what matter. Most men seem to be hugely, forgive the pun, into size. Putin among them. It must gall him so that China's President Xi Jinping towers over him, and Xi is from an ethnic group, the Han Chinese, who are fairly diminutive people. Not to speak of how enraging Zelensky must be to him, since the Ukrainian president has become a mild-mannered global hero, and worse, was actually once a comedian. In a recent conversation with President Emmanuel Macron of France, Putin quoted Soviet-era punk rock lyrics about rape and necrophilia to demonstrate just what Russia wants from Ukraine. So now the bombs fall on a maternity hospital in the besieged city of Mariupol, killing at least 3 people and wounding 17, while big, bad, manly Putin claims he didn't do it and whines about the economic war that the United States is waging against Russia. Meanwhile, an agreement to evacuate from 6 cities appears spotty, to say the least, while many of the evacuations are failing for the 3rd day in a row. Kamala Harris, our vice president, God, how I love saying that, has arrived in Poland to negotiate the tricky passage of U.S. military aid to Ukraine and into Ukraine via Poland without anybody triggering open war. As an aside, I must tell you that seeing this tough, smart, former prosecutor, now vice president, woman of color, on the other side of some imaginary table from Vladimir, well, it gets my blood running strong. But it's no big surprise why women sue for peace. It's good for us and all other living things. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.